Berserk tells the brutal, tragic, and gripping story of a lone mercenary named Guts, set against a backdrop of medieval warfare, personal ambition, and supernatural horror. The anime opens with a chilling prologue, a glimpse into the future where Guts, now a battle-hardened warrior with a massive sword and a mechanical arm, slaughters demons with rage in his eyes. But this scene is a flash-forward, only briefly hinting at the dark fate to come. The real story begins when Guts is much younger, a wandering swordsman driven by violence, pain, and an unshakable desire to survive. Born from the corpse of a hanged woman beneath a tree of the dead, Guts's life starts in blood. Taken in by mercenaries, he grows up under harsh and abusive conditions. His adoptive father, Gambino, trains him in combat but resents his existence. After a series of tragic events, including being sold out and violated as a child by a fellow mercenary, then killing Gambino in self-defense, Guts runs away from the only life he's known and survives by selling his sword in battle. By the time we meet him properly, he is a cold and ferocious warrior whose only companions are death and steel. It is during one of these brutal skirmishes that he catches the eye of Griffith, the charismatic leader of a rising mercenary band known as the Band of the Hawk. Griffith is beautiful, ambitious, and magnetic, a man with eyes set on his destiny. He sees in Guts a weapon, a tool, perhaps even something more. After a brief but intense duel in which Griffith defeats Guts and claims him as his own, Guts is essentially drafted into the Band of the Hawk. What follows is a transformation. The Band of the Hawk, under Griffith's leadership, begins rising to prominence in the 100-Year War between the Midland and Tudor kingdoms. With Guts as their fiercest warrior, they begin conquering impossible odds. Guts becomes a vital instrument in Griffith's rise, serving in pivotal battles and gaining fame as the Hawks win victory after victory. During this time, Guts begins to develop a complex relationship with Griffith and the rest of the Hawks, especially with Casca, Griffith's lieutenant and a fierce warrior in her own right. Guts and Casca's relationship is turbulent. At first, Casca resents Guts for being an outsider, someone who Griffith favors too deeply and trusts too much. But as time passes and they fight together, survive ambushes, and struggle with the costs of war, a bond grows. Guts, who once fought only to survive, begins to find purpose and connection, a place where he belongs. For the first time, he isn't simply fighting because he has to, but for comrades he values. Yet beneath the surface of this camaraderie, darker forces stir. Griffith is not just a charismatic leader. He's a man utterly consumed by a dream to one day rule his own kingdom, and anyone who stands in the way of that dream, friend or foe, becomes expendable. Griffith possesses a mysterious object called a behelit, a small, grotesque, egg-shaped trinket with a face that appears to slumber. It is an artifact that will one day change everything, but for most of the anime, it merely hangs at his neck, silent. As Griffith's power and ambition grow, so does the Band of the Hawk's reputation. Eventually, they're hired by Midland's king, and Griffith is knighted for his success in capturing Doldre, a seemingly impenetrable fortress. This victory, earned largely through Guts' bravery and strategy, solidifies the band's place in noble society. But Guts begins to feel that he is living someone else's dream. He respects Griffith, even admires him, but he doesn't understand what it means to have a dream of his own. This internal struggle comes to a head when Guts overhears Griffith tell Princess Charlotte that a true friend is someone who has their own dream, not someone who simply lives to serve another's. This realization devastates Guts. Though he has built bonds with the band, he understands now that he will never be Griffith's equal if he doesn't carve his own path. In a quiet but powerful moment, Guts leaves the Band of the Hawk after defeating Griffith in a second duel, a symbolic break, as Guts walks away to find his own meaning in life. Griffith is shattered by Guts' departure. Up to this point, he has always been in control, always pushing forward toward his destiny. But the loss of Guts, the man he considered uniquely his, breaks something inside him. In a reckless and desperate move, Griffith seduces Princess Charlotte. This act of passion, or perhaps self-destruction, results in his imprisonment as he's caught and thrown into the dungeon by the king, tortured mercilessly for over a year. In the time that follows, the Band of the Hawk falls into disarray. Branded as traitors, hunted by the Midland army, they become fugitives. Casca takes command, struggling to keep the remnants of the band alive. Guts, meanwhile, has been training in the mountains, sharpening his sword, trying to find meaning, but he returns when he learns of the band's plight. Together, he and Casca rekindle their bond, one now colored by shared trauma and an unspoken love. They hatch a desperate plan to rescue Griffith from the dungeons. When they find him, however, he is a shadow of his former self. His tendons have been severed, his tongue removed, his body broken beyond repair. He cannot walk, cannot speak, the once radiant leader now reduced to a mute husk, and still he clings to life. The rescue is successful, but it becomes clear Griffith will never reclaim his past glory. His dream is over, or so it seems. One day, as Griffith is being wheeled through the countryside, he stumbles upon his behelit, the crimson behelit, the egg of the king. In that moment, with everything lost and the weight of failure crushing him, he activates it. The sky darkens. The air becomes thick with dread. Reality fractures as the group is pulled into another dimension, the interstice, a realm between worlds. There they encounter the God Hand, 5 monstrous, otherworldly beings who rule over fate itself. Among them is the being known as Void, who declares that Griffith has been chosen to ascend and become one of them. All he has to do is sacrifice those he holds most dear, the Band of the Hawk. The scene is one of utter terror. The members of the Hawks, bound by ethereal forces, watch in horror as their leader, the man they loved and followed, betrays them. Griffith, after a moment of silent contemplation, makes his choice. He sacrifices them all. In doing so, he is reborn as Femto, the 5th member of the God Hand. What follows is the infamous Eclipse, a blood-soaked nightmare of mutilation and despair. Apostles, monstrous demons serving the God Hand, descend upon the Hawks and butcher them in a frenzy of violence. Guts fights back, but he's hopelessly outmatched. The true horror reaches its peak when Femto, Griffith in his new form, descends upon Casca and violates her in front of Guts. The scene is haunting, unforgettable, and marks the final destruction of the Band of the Hawk. Guts is forced to watch, screaming, his left arm torn off as he tries in vain to stop the act. His right eye is gouged out. He survives, but only just. So does Casca, though her mind is shattered by the trauma. They are saved by the Skull Knight, a mysterious figure who appears suddenly and rescues the 2 survivors from the collapsing nightmare. But they do not leave unscarred. Guts and Casca are branded, literally, with a mark that will forever attract evil to them. Now, every demon, every cursed spirit will hunt them. The world they once knew is gone. The final scenes of the anime return to where the series began. Guts, now the Black Swordsman, hunting demons across the land, driven by revenge. He wears a massive sword on his back, a cannon hidden in his prosthetic arm, and rage burning in his soul. Casca, now mentally broken and incapable of speech or comprehension, is in the care of others, and Guts is determined to one day make Griffith pay. But Berserk does not end with closure. It ends with a scream, with a curse, with blood. The 1997 anime concludes not with a triumph of good over evil, but with the raw aftermath of betrayal, pain, and loss. Guts' journey is only beginning, but the anime leaves us in the wreckage of dreams. Griffith's twisted ambition, Guts' broken trust, Casca's stolen sanity, and a world forever changed.